Very good afternoon to you. It's the 70th running of the Flèche Wallonne, the Walloon Arrow, in this French-speaking part of Belgium from Charleroi to Huy. A shade over 200 kilometers through the Ardennes. It's the first of the two big Ardennes classics, Liège-Bastogne-Liège, coming up next weekend. Well, this is one of the last two men to have won Flèche Wallonne and then go on to win the Tour de France. Laurent Fignon back in 1986 by himself, and that man on the left-hand side, no surprise, Lance Armstrong. Battling it out to the very last and taking victory way back now in 1996. So, 10 years separating Fignon and Armstrong, who went on to win the Tour in those years. Will the winner of this year's Flèche Wallonne go on to win the Tour de France, or will they just show a display of stonking form like Frank Schleck did during the Amstel Gold Race? Well, that was the situation earlier today with Frédéric Fignon and José Luis Arrieta going over the top of the Mur de Huy first time around. And this, the peloton following them up. Paolo Bettini as ever towards the front, little Thomas Voeckler. All riding across the front, Serge Bajouet, pretty much all together. And the race really only ignites in the last 100 kilometers or so, sometimes even less, in this Arrow of Walloon, set up way back in the 1930s to counter the cobbled Flandrian classics. The Walloon part of Belgium really wanted their own classics themselves. There's the route today then, departing from Charleroi, starting at Huy and then doing this killer loop right the way around, taking up the Mur de Huy 3 times. Well, this is live pictures now coming to you from the Flèche Wallonne. 19 seconds for these two men. Alexander Moos on the right-hand side for Phonak, and Oscar Freire have just nipped away from the peloton. Another 3 or 4 riders trying to get across to those two. It's 60 kilometers to go. Two riders, José Luis Arrieta and Frédéric Fignon, you saw, were away for a long time. Had a lead of about 5 minutes. It's come down within the last 40 Ks or so. They've been swallowed back in. Just Postema, the teammate of Oscar Freire, nipped off the front for about 100 meters or so, and that was it. He was brought back in. The weather, as you can see, pretty good today. It's not nice when it can be very foggy in the Ardennes region, but take nothing for granted. The weather can flip round on its head almost immediately. Remember, we're running through that area that's made famous for motor racing fans by the Spa-Francorchamps circuit. In fact, the race started from Spa for a long time, and it can change on a sixpence, the weather there. You may remember last year that Jens Vogt went away for a long time, was caught within the last 4K or so, to be hauled back. Really the hero of last year's race. Well, Sean Kelly still abed with flu, or just up and about, just about. He gave me a call the other day saying he'd been out on his bike as per usual. Still feeling very rough indeed. Our best to you, Sean. Get better soon, because it's Liège-Bastogne-Liège on Sunday. And we hope to have you back in the box. Joining me in the box instead, super sub Graham Jones, who enjoyed an initial outing for Eurosport during Paris-Roubaix. Nice to see you again in the box, Graham. It's a pretty good day for this, weather-wise, for this tour, for this Flèche Wallonne today.
Yeah, well, as we know, in Flèche Wallonne, Liège-Bastogne-Liège, the Ardennes sort of double. Frequently we get bad weather in this, snow, rain, but it's nice to see the sun shining, although it's still pretty cool.
What's the character of this race? I mean, it strikes me that Flèche Wallonne is one of those races that if you've shown good form in Amstel Gold, it's really a form race. It's hard and fast, under or just about 200 kilometers. It goes all the time, up and down, up and down. It's a real test of who's got absolute peak form for this one race, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, there's, again, it's a separation of sort of like riders tend to target Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix. Then you have this sort of new set of riders, more of the climbers that target this week, or this 2 weeks of racing with the Amstel Gold Race. I mean, the Amstel Gold Race, up until a few years ago, actually used to be after these two races, but now it falls in between Roubaix and the Flèche Wallonne and Liège-Bastogne-Liège. But normally, so they're the same sort of rider that will ride those 3 races.
Well, Freire has always been there or thereabouts at the front of this race for the last 4 or 5 years anyway. Alexander Moos, former Swiss national road race champion, bit more of a climber than Freire, but it's a wicked little hill up the finish today. They've been across it twice. The Mur de Huy, Mur meaning wall, and that shows you how steep it is. Gets up to nearly 19% at one point, an average gradient of about 10%. We're going to take a short commercial break. 57.5 kilometers to go, with Moose and Frère just nipping off the front. Well, way back on April the 13th, 1936, this race first started. Big year for the Flèche Wallonne, 70 years since its first running. Started, as so many races were, by two entrepreneurial journalists trying to boost sales of their paper, called Les Sports, in this region of Belgium. And it really was set up as a rival to the Flandrian classics. The Flandrians thinking themselves as the real Belgian cyclists, and the Walloons, the French-speaking Belgians, thinking, hang on a minute, I'm not having any of that. So they set up this, as well as Liège-Bastogne-Liège. And this has always been hard and fast. The longest edition of this race, just a shade over 300 kilometers, just 2 years after its inception in 1938. Now, I think the shortest was about 192, something like that. A few years later, this is a shade over 200 kilometers, but hard and fast all the time. The road's much better than in Flanders, and they just go from the gun. Well, so far today, we've had a long breakaway of a number of riders. That was one of them. In fact, José Luis Arrieta was in the break very early on, now shelled out the back. He went along with Frédéric Finot of FDJ, and they had a lead of up to 5 minutes until they got to the Mur de Huy, and then they were swallowed back up again, and over the second time around, Bettini, Mario Ertz and Jens Vogt just nipped away from the front of the peloton as they went over the Mur de Huy second time around, just to show their strength, I think. Jens Vogt, a man to watch, I would have thought today, Graham. If he's got a little bit of form, last year, sorry, he was away for ages, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Very strong rider, Jens, always on the attack, never gives up, and I don't expect his type of riding or tactics to change any more now, so he could be up there, but we've not really heard much about his form this year. He's been sort of fairly quiet, so we'll wait and see.
Well, Mario Ertz, who went across the top of that Mur de Huy on the second time around, just ahead of the peloton. He sustained a bit of a knee injury at the Amstel Gold Race last week. Alan Piper on the phone to us this morning saying, well, from the car, saying he's feeling pretty good, actually. The knee injury not as bad as everybody thought. He was just showing his strength. He's a former winner here in Flèche Wallonne. Here's Mario Ertz. A bit surprised to see Oscar Frère off the front here, Graham. I'm not quite sure what he's up to, really.
Well, I don't actually, to be honest. I was surprised to see him actually on the start line altogether in this race. I thought he might have gone away quietly now for a bit of a break, but maybe he's filling in the gap in the teams. But he's probably helping prepare the ground for one or two of the other riders in the team.
Well, the pace of the riders just seems to be about bang on what they were expected. It's not particularly quick today. They're all just watching each other at the moment, and pegging these two riders at about 14, 15 seconds. We saw, I think it was Nicky Sorensen from CSC trying to get across the gap, but not being allowed to do so. He's back in the peloton. Early days, but I mean, we've come to it late. Those of you who've been watching the snooker on International, Peter Ebden's match against Holt, we've come to it a little bit late, about half an hour late, so probably worth going straight in for the kill, Graham. Tips for today? What sort of rider excels in this race?
Well, often you've found traditionally in history, you've often seen some of the riders who do well in the big tours, the climbers, you know, even the real mountain goats have done well in this race in the past, but it usually more often suits a good all-round rider. You use your Rebellins, people like that. Unfortunately, we have lost Rebellin today, I believe, to stomach problems.
Yeah, one rider who's not going to be winning again here, David Rebellin, winner here in 2004. That was an incredible year for Rebellin. They did the triple, didn't they? Amstel, Flèche and Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
Yeah, unbelievable. But the other riders, you expect, we'll see how De Luca, I think he's had one or two problems as well, but it's that type of rider, that sort of little guy, strong guy, sort of jumps away. Obviously, the steep climb up to the finish rules out the sprinters.
Of the big favourites then, is this likely to be a bit of a Bettini fest, or...?
Bettini, yeah, he's another one you expect. He's not won any of the big races so far this year, so he'll be desperate to sort of try and get his name at the top of the list.
And I guess that one man who's really hoping for a result will be Bjarne Riis, because they've already won Amstel Gold. They won Paris-Roubaix. They'll be looking for a third on the trot, won't they?
Absolutely, and really strong team, CSC. Likewise, I actually probably see a winner coming from CSC more than likely than from Quick-Step today.
That's interesting. Saw Nicky Sorensen just giving a little dig off the front. Everybody taking a bit of fuel on board if they possibly can. There's Jens Vogt on the far left-hand side of your picture, just coming up towards the front, having a bit of a chat. Everybody looking across and chatting to each other. The winner of Amstel Gold, Frank Schleck, in the CSC squad for today's race. A really convincing victory at Amstel Gold for Schleck. He just rode away from everybody, didn't he?
Yeah, fantastic performance. But he's been performing well all year, really, so it's one of those riders who's been waiting in the wings to have his day, and I would expect to see him up there as well again today, especially from Luxembourg. It's all his type of terrain that he will be training on right from being a young rider.
Yeah, absolutely. You mustn't forget that. It's pretty close to home, this, for Frank Schleck. He'll feel at home on these roads, and that counts for an awful lot. Maybe that extra 2% that you need, or even 1% that you need to get away from everybody. Wouldn't worry too much about the gap going out a little bit. It's not that worrying. They're just taking fuel on board and allowing these two to dangle out in front for a bit. Yeah, Frank Schleck, well, he launched the attack on the Poggio in Milan-San Remo, so he had a form earlier in the month as well. And a lot of Bjarne Riis has been talking about him as a Grand Tour champion as well. Frank Schleck, he's a very talented all-round rider, can obviously climb very strong this year. What about the outsiders? People like, maybe Fabian Wegman, or so. He's had 2 top 10 finishes in this race before. Could he spring a surprise? A little wiry climber like that. Not a great champion, but a very good all-round rider and a good pair of legs for the mountains. Won the mountains classification in the Giro by just hanging on a couple of years ago.
Yeah, exactly. That's the type of rider that does do well in this, and you quite often do get 1 or 2 surprises that spring up in this race.
Well, no Alessandro Ballan for Lampre, but we've got Salvatore Commesso. You saw him at the front of the peloton if you were watching our introduction. Look out for the distinctive goatee and distinctive riding style with both knees pointing outwards. It always makes me laugh. I know I've said it before, but he makes me laugh, especially in time trials. He gets the most fantastic equipment given to him. Aero helmet, skin suits, and then rides with his knees and arms out, which seems to negate every advantage he'd ever have.
Yeah, he has to look good.
Yeah, he's got to look good.
Typical Italian, really. But I was just noticing Commesso's team, Lampre, it's more of a token effort for their team today. Only 6 riders on the start line.
Yeah, Commesso, Figueras, Marco Mazzano, he's a pretty handy rider. Marzoli, Yevgeny Petrov, and Tadej Valjevets. Well, he's a good rider, but we haven't heard much of Valjevets in the last year or so. Had a good season a couple of years ago, especially in the Giro. That's unsurprising, I think, because they entered Slovenia for a while. Well, De Wittemon Lotto, well, they've lost Wim van Huffel, as far as we hear over race radio. Still got some good riders, though. Christoph Brand, Mario Ertz is feeling good. Cadel Evans, the nominal leader, though. Evans, a good finisher last year. Is he strong enough to nip away, or is he just more of a pace climber for you, Glenn?
Well, it depends entirely on his form. I mean, a lot of riders, we've seen traditionally in the past, some of the riders who are aiming for the bigger races in the middle of the summer, the big tours, do actually come and test themselves at this sort of race. And we've even seen Lance Armstrong do well in this race in the past, and traditionally used to test himself in the Amstel Gold race. And there's also in their team Christopher Horner, who's been going quite well this year.
Yeah, he's a good rider. Very aggressive, Chris Horner. I'm really pleased for Horner that he's had a couple of good seasons, because he seemed to be lost in the wilderness for a while and got into Navigators, tried his heart out at Navigators and managed to get a berth at Sonia Deville, and that's led to a change to the Belgian team, De Wittemon Lotto. 57 seconds now. The gap between these two, Oscar Freire and Alexander Moos, and the peloton who are just rolling along, refueling with just under 50k to go. I do like those BMC bikes. They're rather smart, actually. Although the Colnagos are generally acknowledged by the peloton to be the best bikes to ride on in the peloton. They've become a bit of a classic, haven't they, this bike?
It's certainly the most famous name, yeah.
BMC is looking a little bit less like the Forth Bridge this year than they were last year.
It looked like it was made of iron gird as it passed, didn't it?
Yeah, they did, yeah. They did indeed. Not that I should be complaining. I used to ride a Kirk Precision. Do you remember them?
Yes,
I've still got one. It weighs a ton.
Made of two halves, weren't they? Two moulded together? Or?
It was injection moulded. They used to pour molten magnesium alloy into this enormous, great big die cast machine. It used to go crunch together, and out came a frame. But I remember TVM rode them onto the Champs-Élysées, years and years and years ago. I don't know exactly when it was, but the TVM team, I think Phil Anderson was riding from them by that time. But off they went onto the Champs-Élysées on yellow painted Kirk Precisions, and that's about the only time I ever saw them on the international scene. They'd obviously been paid a great deal of money by Frank Kirk to ride them. I don't know what Frank Kirk's doing now. I'd be very pleased to hear from him if he still follows bike racing at all. It was an interesting concept, but for a bike frame, it weighed an absolute ton. I picked mine up for 30 quid. From John Mack in Welling Garden City, who answered a call on Eurosport from me. He rang up and said, "Do you want one, mate? I got it for 30 quid if you want it." so I went and got it.
Just looking at the race there, it's interesting to see Liquigas sort of quite heavily represented at the front there. So obviously De Luca or Garzelli must be feeling quite good and maybe looking to do a good ride today.
Well, Garzelli could possibly do something. He's no mean sprinter. He's a bit overlooked as an all-round rider. I know we keep pushing it on Eurosport as him being an all-round rider, but he's best known, of course, as a Giro victor and therefore a climber. But he can turn his hand to just about anything, Garzelli, can't he?
He does. It's surprising, actually. If you do look through results, it's amazing how well he is, even in big bunch sprints. He always tries to keep out of the way in the closing kilometres. The amount of times he finishes in sort of 10th or 15th, even on flat bunch sprints, so he's quite capable of doing well. Very strong from a small group.
Here's a wild card then. There's Frank Schleck, by the way. You can see in the Luxembourg Road Race Champions jersey in the middle, just behind the Liquigas riders. Here's a wild card for you then, Graham. What do you think about maybe Thomas Voeckler doing something today? It's an uphill finish. He had a great finish in the Tour of the Basque Country against Jens Vogt, so he's a strong boy, and they must be buoyed up by their win from Paris-Camembert. Anthony Geslin taking that victory for them. They need all the wins they can get. He's a feisty little rider, maybe a little outside chance there.
Yeah, you never know. Maybe he's sort of having done that great ride in the Tour de France now. I think he tends to target the Tour now as his big event of the year, maybe hoping to replicate something he did before. But I know Thomas well, and he is a really courageous rider, always on the attack, very affable rider as well, and I like Thomas a lot.
Yeah, I do. He's a lovely guy. In fact, he looks almost identical. To the guy I shared a house with when I was at living in Sheffield when I first started biking as a mountain biker, called Mike White. Looks exactly the same. I was almost had to do a double take when I first saw him, but lovely guy from Martinique originally. And came over and has really sort of forced his way into the French bike racing scene. Not something you do an awful lot in Martinique, is it? Top-class bike racing. So he's had to work very hard. And in many ways, he's a throwback to riders maybe 30, 40 years ago who had to come here and do it all for themselves.
Yeah, and of course we all know about the Australians coming probably the furthest distance and how well they're doing now. When I was racing, it was just the odd one or two, but now they're a dominant force.
One of those, two of them probably on this race today. Neil Stevens, and a bit earlier on, Alan Piper, earlier on in the racing career, should I say. Piper in the De Vitamin Lotto car as director. He'll also be there for Liège-Bastogne-Liège as well. Well, another man we shouldn't discount in this classic today is Alejandro Valverde. Another good finish for him. He's good on these strong uphills, and he's got a fair turn of speed as well. He'll be one to watch up near the front. And there's a number of very, very good riders could do something. Echeverria finishing very well last year, now riding for Liberty Seguros. He could do something. Could Serrano again, as for Liberty Seguros has had finishes like this before in the Tour. We can nip off at a sort of medium level. And that man, Leonardo Bertognoli, again riding strongly towards the front. He's on the far left-hand side of your screen. A couple of teams that you wouldn't normally see. Well, AG2R, we haven't seen much of them at all. They are back in the fold, being in the Pro Tour. Barlow World Riding, Igor Astoloa, a former winner here, is leading their team. Chocolate Jacques here as well, as our Lambau Credit Colnago. Sadly, no Steve Cummins for the British viewers, or Paul Manning. And congratulations to Paul for his bronze in the track, by the way.
With City cycling shoes.
Well, look at this. All along the front of the peloton is Liquigas and Graham. They must be trying to set up something for, well, there could be a number of riders that they could set something up for, but as you say, Garzelli or De Luca today.
Yeah, it looks like it. De Luca's sitting last man of his team there, looking very comfortable, so they're obviously very confident.
How much does a show of force play in these psychologically on other teams at this stage in a race? You've got 44 Ks to go. If your team gets right to the front and starts dictating everything, even if you're not feeling particularly brilliant, is this a good thing to do?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's quite often a lot of teams have done that in the past, and but I think Liquigas at the moment is just making sure that breakaway doesn't get too far, keeping it at around about a minute, no more.
This is Thierry Maréchal, I think, the Belgian. Trying to go across to Frère and Alexandre Mousse. Bridge that gap. Well, we see him, he's a breakaway specialist, Maréchal. We see him quite a lot. Certainly in the early part of the Tour de France, he tends to launch himself down the road and in breaks. And other than that, don't see him an awful lot. The Château de Altine. It's actually beautiful around here. If you've never been to the Ardennes, please do go. I mean, Flanders has its own character, which is a bit like North Lincolnshire, quite frankly. Flat, windy. The roads are god-awful most of the time. Either concrete slabs with grass going up through them and mud and so on, or the very famous cobbles. Not that you go on those most of the time, but you can go and visit them. Most of the climbs that are used in the Tour of Flanders, you can get up every day of the week. So if you want to go cycling in Flanders, that's basically what it's like. Windswept, largely flat apart from some very nasty cobbled climbs, which are short and sharp. We're here in the Ardennes, it's completely different. It's absolutely beautiful. And there are some really nasty long climbs here, as well as everything else. Lots of pine forest, the weather is very changeable, the people are absolutely lovely. They love their food and drink here. If anything, they're a little bit more fussy than the French in the Ardennes, and when it comes to the food and the wine, they really are gourmands here in the Ardennes. 1 minute and 15 seconds then, these two ahead. They're just letting them dangle out there, aren't they, Graham? They're not doing anything else.
Yeah, I was just looking at that aerial shot there. It just showed you a great picture of just how big the peloton is, with only 40 kilometres to go in now, just over 40 kilometres to go in such a hilly race. So at the moment there's been no real racing, so so many riders there in this group, it could be quite an exciting finale.
We've lost a few riders. Koos Moerenhout had a crash. The Dutchman had a crash early on, in fact in the neutralised zone as we understand it, so he was out very, very early. Manuel Mori from Sonia Deval dropped out as well, so we've lost two riders. Frank van den Broek, riding for Unibet of course nowadays, didn't even start this morning with a fever, and I wonder whether he'll ever get his career back on track. His place being taken by Erwin Thies. That really the sum total of dropouts and non-starters this morning. Frank van den Broek, what is that man like? Honestly, I mean, such a huge talent, but somebody just who hasn't got the mental wherewithal to keep it together.
No, that's very often the case with any top sportsman, really. It's such a shame to see people with great talent they go off the rails. We've seen it in so many other sports.
Do you think cycling is more prone to it than other sports?
No, I don't think so. I mean, well, in many ways, because it's such a tough sport, and it really is something that you can't hide. Whereas in football, we've seen people who, with fantastic talent, can actually still perform on a football field, i.e. George Best, people like that, you know. But in cycling, there's no hiding place. And Frank, I don't know. It's really is such a shame, because I've known him since he was a kid. Really, we used to meet at his father's cafe in Belgium when I was living in France. Used to live just over the border. And I can remember him being 4 or 5 running around the cafe as a kid, so sort of like followed his career all the way through, really. So it's quite sad to see, and a very classy rider, but unfortunately I think we've seen the last of him, certainly at the top ranks of the sport.
Yeah, I think so. It'd be a shame if he then continues on the downward slopes, you know, goes for less and lesser teams all the time and just becomes a journeyman basically. He was once a great rider for 2 or 3 seasons and then disappeared off the scene and went sliding down to end up in, well, basically Pro-Am Kermisses and so on. That wouldn't be a great end for Frank van den Broek. We really hope he does put in a performance now and again. But riding for Unibet now, of course, he was at Mr. Bookmaker last year and fell out with the director there as well. Didn't quite work it out. Great shame. But he's not in the race today. He's suffering from a bit of a fever. T's taking his place instead. Liquigas still on the front here, dictating all the pace. That's interesting. Look, Casa de Pagna, which formerly Les Balears, they're all on the front as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that means that Valverde is feeling particularly good. There's Serge Bajouet for Quick Step in the middle in the Belgian Road Race Champions jersey. You can see on the far top of your shot is Frank Schleck in the Luxembourg Champions jersey. A number of top riders just keeping themselves towards the front now. This is the rear of the peloton. Oh, and a CSC rider at the back here. A long gangly rider as well. Could be Sorensen. No, I think it's, is that Vogt? No, it's not. Difficult to tell from this angle. Oh, it's Van der Velde, isn't it? Christian Van der Velde, the American. Just keeping in contact with the back. People don't sort of realise, do they, Graham, that the peloton looks fairly static all the time, but it's moving all the time. If you get to the back, then you're either just hanging on or just sitting in there. But somewhere, up towards the front and in the middle of the peloton, it's not a static thing. It's a constantly dynamic, moving object, isn't it? It's an organic entity, and it moves around all the time.
It is. You've got those riders trying to stay near the front all the time, particularly on roads like this. It's small roads, switchbacks, right turns, small climbs. So you always need to be near the front. So it's a constant revolving battle to stay in position.
Well, the weather in this 70th year for the Flèche Wallonne, absolutely ideal. We've seen in the past people coming out of the mist to finish in Huy because it's been such horrible weather. 1 minute and 19 seconds is the gap over the peloton for these two riders, Oscar Freire and Alexandre Mus. And Thierry Maréchal, the Belgian, riding for Cofidis, in between the peloton and those two escapees. At the moment, things are a bit strung out at the moment. Narrowish roads, they've come out into a slightly wider section now, but Liquigas riding tempo on the front of the peloton, keeping everything together, and they're slowly going to reel these guys in, I think, now. Well, of course, at the same time as the men's Flèche Wallonne, the ladies' Flèche Wallonne running in tandem, starting in Huy and coming back towards Huy at the same time. We had a victor last year, in what, 2 years actually, for Nicole Cook, 2003, 2005, and they've been running in tandem. Any results in from that so far?
Well, it looks like she's done it again. We've just seen the feed that she's finished the winner again. Third victory for Nicole Cook in the ladies' Flèche Wallonne after victories in 2003 and 2005. So well done to her again.
Fantastic stuff, really fantastic. In the men's edition, I think there's only been, let me rack my brains, I think there's only been 2 or 3 riders who've done that, isn't there, that had a triple victory in the Flèche Wallonne. And I know Moreno Argentin was one, 91, 94, I can't remember what the first one was. Merckx was another, but who was the first one? Way back in the 40s, I think.
Marcel Kint.
Marcel Kint. Interestingly, this race was run during the last war as well, the Second World War. Unlike a lot of the other races which were stopped during wartime, this one carried on being ridden, and I've got a feeling that Kint did the triple in 3 successive years, 43, 44 and 45, but I'll look that up.
It is correct, dear.
Didn't have much of a career after the Second World War, Marcel Kint. He did win the World Road Race Championship before the war, but slipped away after the war, died, if I remember rightly, just after the turn of the century, I think 2001 or 2002. But a very great rider in his day, Marcel Kint. Triple winner of this race. Well, the last person to do 3 victories, not back-to-back, but was Moreno Argentin, and he was a real class act, wasn't he, Graham? Moreno Argentin, one of my favourite all-time riders. Speak to Sean about him occasionally, and he's often tinged with happiness and sadness, because he often did battle with, you know, head-to-head with Moreno Argentin, and counts his victory over Argentin in the, I think it was 92, wasn't it, San Remo?
Oh, that was fantastic TV.
His best ever victory. I watched it the other day, actually. Absolutely brilliant piece of descending by Sean.
You could see him inching closer and closer on that descent all the way. Great finale to a race that was.
A wonderful double take by Argentin when Sean came up behind him and sat on his rear wheel, and Argentin looked over his shoulder and had to look again, thinking, what on earth are you doing there? I didn't expect anybody to come back. And then his goose was cooked. Although, you know, Argentin was no mean sprinter himself. I mean, he could power away to a finish, but nowhere near the class of Sean. Well, that was the last time that anybody did the triple here. 1990, just looking it up, that was the first of Moreno Argentin's victories here. 91 and 94. Merckx doing the triples, 67, 70 and 72. And Marcel Kint, as we just mentioned, 43, 44 and 45. Well, we're going to take another short commercial break. 1:16 the gap, being pegged by Liquigas and the peloton.
The Giro d'Italia, cycling's first major tour, from May 6th, live on Eurosport and Eurosport 2.
Formula technology. Kumho.
A thousand moments, 1,000 challenges, 1,000 dreams, 1,000 flavors, 1,000 emotions. Estoril, one place, 1,000 sensations in Portugal.
Take anything, anywhere. The new L200.
Welcome back to our live coverage here of Flèche Wallonne. It's the 70th year that the race has been in existence. Formed to rival the great Flandrian classics of the Tour of Flanders and I guess Paris-Roubaix, but not quite Belgium, but there we go. These Walloon classics that run back-to-back, Flèche Wallonne and Liège-Bastogne-Liège, based around the Ardennes. At one time it was on successive weekends and was called Le Weekend Ardennais. And now this one comes in the middle of the week. Amstel Gold coming last Sunday. Frank Schleck, the victor there. We were looking at other people we haven't mentioned who could do something today. And Philippe Gilbert was a rider we hadn't mentioned at all, the FDJ rider. But he's a French-speaking Belgian. He'd love to do something here, wouldn't he, Graham?
He would, yeah, definitely. Home territory, certainly capable of doing something.
Great win at Het Valk, rode away from everybody. He could do something today. I wouldn't put it past Gilbert to do something. In fact, I'll go for him to be up there. How about that as an outside bet? Philippe Gilbert for me. But we were just discussing while we were on the ad break, while you were on the ad break, and we were off air. We were just discussing, Graham, that this is the sort of race that you could get an outsider do something, because the finish is quite difficult, isn't it? Not just a climb, but there's a run down into the town first. Yeah,
there's a long descent into the town, and then you've got that sort of leg burning. Some riders adapt better to going up a steep climb after a descent better than others. So there's always that chance, and there's a couple of climbs beforehand, before that long descent, but people get a bit of a gap. No real chase comes.
Well, we do like to see outsiders, and there's some other big names who could do things. Kim Kirchen, of course, on the podium here last year. Eric Decker could do something, of course. He's that sort of rider. Even Thomas Decker, if he fancies himself. He's been in great form. The young man would love to stamp his authority on a major classic. Maybe a little bit too early for him. One rider who might like to go away early and attack on the downhill or the climbs just before the downhill run into Huy. Maybe a rider like Axel Merckx, trying to emulate his father. There's a number of riders who could try and go away. I love seeing riders like Garcia Acosta and his big sort of profile with a big Roman nose. He'd like to get away and do something. Echevarria, typical little gutsy rider who could try and make it away. Vicchioso, he's another rider who could try and get away. What about Samuel Sanchez? He must be burning with a little bit of, well, smarting really, having lost that Tour of the Basque Country on the very last day in the time trial. And shunted all the way down the order as well, from first place down to fourth, I think it was, in the end, for Samuel Sanchez, and robbed in Paris-Nice as well. I mean, he didn't do an awful lot there when he was expected to. Maybe he might want to launch himself off an attack.
Certainly, it's good terrain for him again. You know, all these sort of riders, the Spanish riders, anybody who's a good climber, you know, has got reasonable form, is quite well with a chance. I mean, you look down the list, there's lots of riders that we've all seen in the Tour de France in the past. Eben Mayo, I mean, you're not likely to see him today. He's probably here getting some miles in, but there's all these sort of Mancebo from AG2R. They're all in this race. All the climbers.
Well, talking of nationalities, looking at the start list, you'll see more Spanish riders than anybody else in this Ardennes Classic, which is a bit extraordinary in itself. You can see how difficult these climbs are around here. Just look at that gradient. You can see it's a steep gradient on the television, but if you really want to see how steep a gradient is, look at a house. If you get go past a house, look at the front doorstep and look at the gradient of the road, and you can just see how steep it is, because obviously houses are always built on the flat, and that gives you a good indication from a side view as how steep that gradient is. Not a nice climb at all. 31 kilometers to go. Well, Nicole Cook has done the treble, 2003, 2005, and this year she's won the Flèche Wallonne for women, feminine, starting at Huy and finishing at Huy. Fantastic. If she's sitting down now watching the end of the men's race, congratulations, Nicole. I'll give you a ring later if I can to give you my personal congratulations, but fantastic ride by you. Brits in this race, though, in the men's race, Graham, there's been a few in the past, and they've done pretty well.
Yeah, we've not done as well in this race as we have done in many of the other one-day classics, but we've had a few riders who've done well in the past. Tom Simpson's been in the first 10 3 times. He's our best ever finisher. He's finished third back in 1965. But Brian Robinson finished fourth. I know Brian quite well. I did some training camps with him in Spain a few years ago. Really nice guy. One really surprised, and I have to apologise to this, and he's a friend of mine, Paul Watson. I don't remember him, but he finished sixth in 1987. But the thing is, I was actually riding for the same team that year, so that's quite a surprise. And Robert Miller, famous, our best ever finisher in Tour de France in fourth place, finished ninth in 1990. So you can see it's all those sort of guys who were, you know, good climbers.
Yeah, I was just about to say, everybody on that list can climb, can't they? Simpson, a very, very good climber, not a super climber. Robert Miller, of course, a super climber, a superstar of climbing. To finish ninth just shows how hard this finish is into Huy, although the finish has changed over these. This is one of the few races, isn't it, in the calendar, Graham, that's changed dramatically over its existence. It's been 70 years, and they've moved it around all over the place. Always been in this Walloon area, but they've run it backwards from Huy to Liège, from Liège to Huy. It's run from Spa to Huy. It's run all over the shop.
It has, and it's probably must set the record for any race, whether it's a big classic or not, for the amount of different formats it's been under. It's run from Tournai to Liège, Mons-Liège, Mons-Marcinelle, Mons-Charleroi, Mons-Liège, Charleroi-Liège, all over the place. Liège-Marcinelle again, Verviers-Marcinelle, Verviers-Verviers, Absolutely, it must be about 20 plus different formats that we've had the Flèche Wallonne in the past, but it's been in this traditional format now for a few years, or at least finishing in Huy since the early 80s.
Well, nice to see my kiss of death as a commentator has already struck. Marcus Forthen was off the back for Gerolstein, and the very next rider we saw off the back was Garcia Acosta. So, having mentioned him as a sort of attacking rider, right, nip away in the last 5k or so, he's off the back of the peloton. Oscar Freire and Alexandre Mus continuing on their way at the front, still under a minute with 30 k's to go. Well, I guess Freire has no ambitions of doing much today unless he's feeling super strong and can go with any counter-attack, because he's been out there for a long time by himself. We've got a rider from Barlow World in second place at Astelor. I think it is Igor Astelor from Barlow World in the red jersey there, all by himself, along with we saw Bettini at the front, and everybody looking at each other. Valverde is in there. Is that who's the T-Mobile rider? Well, they've got a very, very strong team, T-Mobile. Could easily be Kessler. Could be Patrick Sinkovits. In fact, it looks a bit too lightweight for Kessler, who's quite a stocky old rider. Could be Sinkovits. They've also got Weisserman as well, who's not had the sort of season he would like so far. He has wanted to do a little bit more early on in the classics, but luck has not been with him.
No, it's not at all. But I was just noticing a few riders already. We could see Ivanov as well there near the front. One or two riders who we saw in the Amstel Gold Race last week.
De Luca and team really turning up the wick, aren't they? Ivanov sitting right behind De Luca. And work being done on the front to drag these back. And look how quickly it's tumbling, this gap. It was about a minute, now it's to well under a minute. And some riders beginning to suffer at the back. There's a Milram rider just hanging off the back. That's Marcus Forthen that has just been passed. And I think that's Bjorn Schroeder on the back for Milram. And everybody beginning to be shelled out. It's quite a short race, but hard all the way. Bettini going off the front then. Just testing the legs of everybody else. And they're all looking at each other at the moment. They can't let him get too far away, but just a little dig, I think.
Yeah, we saw him in the Amstel Gold Race at the weekend doing a similar type of thing. Actually, looking at it, I thought he rode quite badly in a way in the Amstel Gold Race. He certainly looked the strongest and looked really, but perhaps a little bit overconfident, so maybe he won't make the same mistakes today.
But he does it at least once a year, though, doesn't he, Bettini? At least once a year. He sort of gets this overconfidence that he feels, well, maybe not overconfidence, but he feels really up for it and goes away and digs, and then launches an attack maybe at the wrong time. And it all falls foul for him. It's he can do it fairly regularly. You'd have thought he might have learned by now.
Yeah, but he's one of those riders who's good all-round rider, but with a very strong sprint. So he's always increasing his chances of winning by even attacking and reducing the number of riders in the leading group.
Well, he's a character as well, and that's what we need in cycling. There used to be lots and lots of characters. Well, people say this about every sport. There used to be characters in our sport. Now there aren't any. Personally, I don't believe it. I just think that there are characters, but we just tend to get ironed out very slightly. A little bit more. We saw Ivanov on the front as well. A number of riders coming up. There's Thomas Vogler, I think.
It looks like Thomas Vogler's style to me.
Yeah. Grab those bars and pump away at it. Trying to get across. Is that... well, the Sonia Deval rider, I think, is Jose Angel... not quite sure who that is at the moment. Going off the front.
The gap's certainly coming down quickly anyway, now under 40 seconds.
Could be Bertogliati, could be one of that sort of rider, or it could be Coldo Gil, in fact, going off the front as well. My apologies for that, bit difficult to tell from this overhead shot. There's Valverde just nestling in the back there. De Luca is just keeping himself at the head of affairs with Bettini right behind him. That would be, I think that's Salvatore Commesso just nestling in behind Bettini. Well, the Sonia Deval rider is Coldo Gil, in fact. Good climber. Good all-round rider, but a very good climber indeed. 34 seconds now, the gap, and with just under, well, just a shade over 25k to go, 28.5 kilometres. Everything's going to start jumping around. What are we looking at now, Graham? They're all big favourites going to be looking at each other. The teams have peeled off. It's really man on man now, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we're getting that where we're thinning out the field now. Probably getting down to a group of 20, 30 riders, maybe even less, and we'll start seeing a bit more tactics come into play. People looking at each other and attacks all over the place, I would think.
Well, the weather's held off mercifully today. Good conditions. It's passably warm. There have been no downpours so far in this Ardennes region. Still at 28 kilometres to go. The sky looking a bit grey, but the worst possible scenario now would be just some light drizzle, wouldn't it? On the way you run into Huy, that would be absolutely appalling, because you get that horrible mixture of diesel and grit and mud and dust and rain, and it would just be nasty.
Certainly make the descent interesting into the town before the climb. But you can see the group there now looks down to about 30 riders already.
And a lot of riders content to just slip backwards now. They've done their bit. And the pressure beginning to come on the front there. There's, I think, Vogt at the front. There is De Luca, Bettini. It's not, in fact, Comesso. I thought it was. Well, we're going to leave them with just over 25 to go. Frank Schleck moving up nice and easily. And I think that is Sinkovits going up there with him. There is Astaloa. And they're making contact with the front riders. The De Witteman rider in there as well. We'll take a short break. We'll come back with about 25k to go and expect fireworks in this Flèche Wallonne.
The Mediterranean as it once was.
Take anything, anywhere. The new L200.
26.5 kilometres to go, back a little bit earlier than we suspected, and this looks like a big name break. Trying to reel in the, well, there's a group of 2 or 3 riders up ahead of this lot. And then this second group, there's Igor Astaloa in there. And then they're trying to bring back Frère and Alexander Moos. And then behind that, it's really shattered from now onwards. And we're down to a handful of riders who could do something, unless they can all get back on, and I very much doubt it, Graham. This is a decisive move at about 26 kilometres to go.
Yeah, definitely. The race is really on now, and certainly I don't think too many people are going to get back onto this group from behind now. Just 10, 20, probably 35 riders in that group now. Still Liquigas forcing the pace. Thomas Vogt there in 3rd place, looking good. So your prediction was right.
Well, there's an FDJ rider in there as well. I wonder if that is Gilbert, just behind Vogt. I think actually that I think the T-Mobile rider is Sinkovits. We haven't had race radio confirmation of that, but there was another quick step rider in there as well, and I think
Cedric Vasseur's in there.
Was it Vasseur in there?
Yeah.
Bettini's made this break as well. Valverde was looking very good. Frank Schleck was looking really smooth, in fact. And it wasn't Valverde. I think Valverde was on the wheel of Schleck, knowing how strong he is. And he was just moved across the gap. The break went. They got a gap of about maybe 50 metres or so, and Schleck just upped the pace. Didn't get out the saddle or anything. He just turned those pedals a little bit faster and cruised across to the next group, looking very, very strong and be super confident. A win gives you massive confidence, doesn't it, Graham?
Oh, definitely. It's the amount of riders you've seen over the years, and they're always there or thereabouts, and then they get one win, and then that's it. I can remember somebody like Criquillon was a similar rider. He sort of won the World Championships out of the blue, and then went on to win several other classics.
Serge Baget, the Belgian champion. There is Valverde looking very, very cool indeed. Second in line here, then Baget, then Faucla, and then three Liberty Seguros riders with Philippe Gilbert, I think it is, sandwiched between them. Jörg Jaksche, the top rider in that little group, and Echeverria as well in there. So the two very strong riders up the front for Liberty Seguros. Bettini just halfway down this group. There's another Bouygues Telecom rider towards the back. It looks like Milram only have one rider in here, possibly. Haven't even seen a Milram rider. It's a Discovery rider there. Milram, look, well, there's one, I think, just halfway down this break group, but nobody else. And a Unibet rider at the back. And I think the rider for Unibet, let's check that out, who's actually in this leading group. I think it's Castellana, Angel Castellana, the Spanish rider, but I'm not at all sure. We've only seen a slight glimpse of him. So Baget leading the breakaway group around this corner. That looks as though there's been a little bit of rain here. Now, Graham, we can just change instantly here in the Ardennes, can't it?
Yeah, you can see the shine on the road there. It makes things very interesting on the descent. But already the group's already split to a certain extent, so...
Oh dear. Like, I can see crashes coming. That's not good. 21 seconds, well, they've passed through that damp patch. For these two riders, Oscar Ferrer, Alexander Moos, 22 seconds. So they're still out there then. They're riding quite strongly now, these two.
Yeah, they are. They'll keep it going as long as they can. There's no reason why not to. Obviously, they're not going to stay away till the finish, but they won't give up yet.
What's the betting? I mean, it'll be good for these two, won't it? If maybe 20-year-old riders get across to them and they can just shelter in the back, get a bit of a rest, because Ferrer can use his power, his sprinting power, to get up a hill like the Mur de Huy. Maybe Moose could use his climbing power. It could be handy for them to stick in there. They might not make it to the line, but they've got some shelter then at least. Yeah,
but I think probably they'll be probably pretty much a spent force by the time they get caught by this group now.
It's a pretty big group.
Yeah, Liberty riders there now. We're sort of seeing these teams in groups now from Liquigas. You now see 4 or 5 from Liberty Seguros there now, sitting just behind front two.
Well, Jaksche is in there. We've seen that Echeverria is in there. I wouldn't be surprised if Vigusio is in there. There's Carlos Sastre, I think, from CSC is in there. Gilbert is on the far left-hand side for FDJ. There's Bertognoli for Cofidis. Oh, well, it's not Castellana at the back for Unibet. The rider from Discovery, right on the back of this group, is Jürgen van den Broek. It's Garcia Quesada, who's made the move from Kelme to Unibet this season. Bit of a strange move for Garcia Quesada, I'd have thought. You wouldn't have thought he'd have gone to a Belgian outfit like Unibet.
No, something that was never really happened in the past. You never really saw Italians or any from Southern Europe move to the more Northern European teams, but it seems to be happening more and more often now. And some of them are actually doing quite well out of it. So
yeah, it just shows, I think, the nature of cycling these days is becoming far less partisan, for want of a better word.
Well, it's also the case that because of this Pro Tour now, even these Northern European teams, they know they've got to have riders who can perform well when they do race in Spain or when they race in Italy or Southern France.
Yeah, of course, the Pro Tour is really shaking that up a bit. They've got to have bigger squads, bigger infrastructure. It's quite difficult for them to get the cash together to do that, some of these smaller teams. What do you think about the way they're going to restructure the Pro Tour from 2009? I think it's a good idea to have a promotion and relegation system.
I think they've got to. I think that was one of the bad things about it, was it seemed to be put together rather too quickly for my liking. I think it would take 2 or 3 years to settle down at least anyway, but I think there are 1 or 2 things like relegation. Also, the same thing applies to events as well. Every teams and events all committed to several years of this Pro Tour, but there need to be some sort of facility for teams to go up and down, and also events to be taken out or added.
That's interesting. I mean, I hadn't really considered the idea of almost a relegation promotion table for events. So let's say, for example, as we're watching Flèche Wallonne, in the next two years, it became the most appalling event on the calendar. Then there would be a real possibility it would drop out of the Pro Tour. Is this what you're saying?
Yeah, well, we've seen that in the past. So many races have lived on tradition in the past that it's just they're there by name alone. And I mean, if there's no prize money or the actual organisation of it's not very good, then you know, it deserves not to be in there. The whole idea of this UCI Pro Tour is to improve the whole scenario of the professional cycling scene.
One of the Gerolsteiner riders, I think it is, trying to force the pace at the front now and make things move a little bit faster. Could be Bouygues Telecom. I'm afraid when they open the iris that wide, it's quite difficult to see. Well, I wonder what nationality of victor there will be today. Fermo Carminelli was the first non-Belgian to win this race way back in 1948, but remember, it took 12 years for a non-Belgian to win this race. I think the last English-speaking winner, actually, if you think about it, the last English-speaking winner would have been Lance Armstrong in 1996. I can't think of any other English-speaking winners. Well, we could have an English-speaking winner today if Cadel Evans pulls it out of the bag. Everybody just cruising around gently. The weather's been particularly kind today. The leading group of about 35 riders. There's another group trying to come back to them, chasing very hard indeed. T-Mobile, Lampre, Phonak, Rabobank, Unibet, they're all trying to get across to make this group up to about 45 riders, I would think. Now, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 Unibet riders now in this group. So most teams fairly well represented. Lambau Credit rider, just going through our picture. That was Agretubel as well. First of the Agretubel riders we've seen. Now that was a bit of a shock in the Paris-Nice, wasn't it, Graham, when they let the chap from Agretubel get a lead of, oh, was it something like nearly 20 minutes?
It does happen every now and again in professional cycling, but I think this group coming behind is more to the fact that front group chasing the two in front haven't really forced the pace, so they're all looking at each other, deciding who's going to take up the pace, who's going to attack. So the group behind to come back through sort of default rather than them being strong.
What do you think of the theory that the chap who went away, I can't remember his name offhand, the chap who went away in Paris-Nice, the Agretubel rider, who got a lead of about 18 to 20 minutes. There seems to be some sort of theory that it was a conspiracy to let a small French team go away to show up the race as being fundamentally flawed, and that Quick-Step and other people were not going to chase it down because they had links with rival organisations like the Pro Tour.
I don't know about that one. It's an interesting theory. I haven't really heard that one, but
have you not? That's a very interesting theory that Paris-Nice, owned and administered by the ACO, the Tour de France and Grand Tour organiser, that the big teams who are associated very strongly with the Pro Tour decided not to chase down this lone man on the break because it would make the race look bad and therefore exacerbate help the cause of the Pro Tour rather than the ACO. Very strange theory, I think, but in fact two or three of the directors all went around canvassing this theory during the day. Lots of phone calls went on. Well, and eventually Quick-Step did blow that theory out of the water by chasing. So there we go.
When it comes down to defending a lead or wanting to win the stage, then it takes over.
Yes. We're approaching the 15-kilometre mark still. 23 seconds the lead for Oscar Freire and Alexandre Mous.
We've got that bit of flat road in between the next to the last climb coming up now, so they might just extend their lead just slightly again here while everybody sort of looks behind and sees what's happening in the group.
Mous, devotee of the Julie Casper School of Large Gold Earrings. Well, Quick-Step now on the front.
Tanking.
Doing an awful lot of work There's Baget again. There's Bram Tankink. You can tell him by his particularly turned up nose. Got a very distinctive profile. We were talking earlier, and David Duffield's always said this, that it gets harder and harder as time goes on. There's Kosheshkin for Liberty Seguros going through. It's getting harder and harder to tell riders apart as they wear their helmets and their shades in exactly the same gear all the time. But you still can tell riders by their style of riding, can't you? And Tankink's quite recognisable by his profile as well.
Yeah, everybody's got their own style. They're all different sizes. So you know, if you watch enough of the racing, you should be able to pick out different riders from head-on shots usually. Ryan Cox is still in.
Good rider, Ryan Cox, riding for Barlow World, former winner of the Tour of Langkawi. Didn't ride so well this year in the Tour of Langkawi as his teammate David George. They're riding for a composite South African team who took the victory. Nice to see David George has got a berth at Relax. We did see Thomas Dekker going through there. There's Eric Dekker. But young Thomas is in this group as well. A number of riders. I think that was Peter Wiening just going through the shot. This is a very big, useful group. Oh God, his name, it's gone out of my head. Moreau, Christophe Moreau, riding now for AG2R. Of course, he's swapped over from Credit Agricole, as so has Mancebo. They two big signings, big name signings in the off-season to try and force themselves back into the Pro Tour, and it seemed to have worked. Right?
Yeah, definitely. Often, you know, move for riders often, you know, can kick-start a team and also kick-start one, you know, single rider's career again. But it's interesting again, you see Christophe Moreau, it's all riders who do well traditionally in the big tours.
Paolo Bettini has Serge Baget in front of him. Juan Manuel Garate is the other rider in the Spanish colours. Spanish Road Race Champions colours. There's Schleck being amply shielded by Jens Vogt. If you really want somebody you can rely on 100% to give everything, Jens Vogt is the guy to have. No doubt about that. He's a big, strong lad. Well, thank you for your comments on the message board, www.eurosport.com. There is one running today, and there will be the same one will be running for Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Pat Bolger writing in saying his predictions for today: third, Kim Kirchen; second, Carsten Kruder; or first, Stefano Garzelli. Well, we mentioned him. He also asked if is Butera riding in these Ardennes Classics. Well, he's not riding in this one. There's no doubt about that. All sorts of rumours flying around the rumour mill. Nick Noyens apparently talking to De Wittemon Lotto. I think De Wittemon must be smarting a little bit. His Quick-Step have really upped the pace. They've taken Belgian domestic teams to a whole new level. There was a time not that long ago where they were fairly equal. That's right.
And it's so important for these Belgian teams, you know, to do well in the classics of the two biggest races of the year. Well, particularly Tour of Flanders they target that so much, and you know, to see it go to their main rivals, you know, they will want to be getting some revenge and be looking to how they can improve it for next year.
The Kodain 6%, and Frère looking to keep the pace going. 17 seconds is the gap with just 12.5 kilometers to go. Well, all the major teams represented in this break.
So this is the penultimate climb now. This is where we really start to just, you know, a lot of the time this is where it really takes off now. So we'll expect to see some aggressive riding and people trying to make moves on this climb now.
Well, there's Bram Tankink. He's done his job. He's off the back now. The CSC rider on the far left, can't tell you who that is at the moment, but it's really taking its toll. Garate is slipping back down now. Frère still pushing the pace along at the front, and Moose losing contact. That's it. That's the end for Alexander Moose. So the two-man break now down to one, and Oscar Frère trying his hardest to stay away. And quick step on the front doing the chasing. Serge Baget, there he is. Working hard for a very strong-looking Paolo Bettini. He's tested his legs a couple of times already. Sergei Ivanov on the far right-hand side of your shot, working for either Veseman or Patrick Sinkovits, I would suggest. We've still got Liquigas in the group. The Bouygues Telecom riders beginning to drop back. It's really taking it out of them on this climb, isn't it, Graham?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of those riders that are first to go out of this group were probably some of those riders that were dropped previously and just got back to this group. But it really, the strong riders will be at the front now. There's no hiding.
Well, that's Coldo Gil again, I think, trying to get across to Oscar Freire. And all the favourites will be jostling for position at the front here. And now CSC beginning to turn the screws on the front. Bettini has gone with his, is that Vogt looking over his shoulder? Or Freire caught. It's the end of the break then. And all beginning to split to pieces now. Coldo Gil has launched the counter-attack just as they came up to Oscar Freire. 12 kilometers to go, and he's soon going to be joined by, I think, Alejandro Valverde was going off the front of the peloton as well. Looking strong, Valverde. I don't think Gil is looking that strong. Well, they make big boasts about the technology that goes into their Scott bikes. To Sonia Deval there, they say the most advanced bikes in the peloton technology. Doesn't make you go any faster if your legs aren't up to it, though, does it?
No, you've still got to turn those pedals. There's no substituting that. The hard training and the suffering.
Astalloa second in line for Barlow. Well, a jersey we don't see very much. A great rider on his day. His form has fluctuated over the last few years. There's Gil, he's been dropped now. There's Frank Schleck with the jersey wide open. I think just behind is Jörg Jakscher. And then looking back on the group, there's Carsten Kroon. Now onto the front comes T-Mobile. Well, Bettini, whoa, what are you playing at? What's he doing? Getting off the road.
Pace is really going hard now. Bettini struggled. I think that's partly what hurt him, Valverde.
We have Valverde and Bettini really trying hard. Valverde is being dropped. Bettini's fighting very hard to keep on. Is this Stefan Veseman on the front? I'm not quite sure who it is, actually, for T-Mobile at the moment. It could be Kessler. It could be Veseman. It could be Sinkovits. What on earth is going on there? I think he just wasn't looking where he was going, quite frankly.
I think part of that was he was actually struggling to lose a wheel, and he was trying to move over, get out of the way so the person behind him could come through, but there was nobody there. Valverde had already been or lost the wheel. It's coming back together again now.
Well, that's a nasty little indication that perhaps Bettini and Valverde are going to have trouble if these guys are feeling that strong ahead of them. Valverde sitting in the wheel of Paolo Bettini. They've made contact again. Back on the wheel of Astalloa, and Bettini looking as though he's suffering. The gold handlebar tape, the gold saddle, the gold shoes and helmet, not going to help you if you haven't got the legs. Valverde grimacing as well. Oh, it is Kessler, the big heavy set jaw of Kessler, with Astalloa, Valverde and Bettini. These are the four with 10 kilometers to go. Gone ahead. Can anybody make the gap up? Can they nip across and make contact? Well, I think look, there's going to be more than one or two. The group's going to be down to about 15 or 16, but the rest of the riders aren't too far behind, Graham.
No, there's also one of Valverde's. Oh no, CSC, isn't it? I think bringing up the group behind there. It's gone out of focus slightly.
No, it would help if they could keep it in focus, wouldn't it? I think that was Jens Vogt again dragging Frank Schleck up. It looks like Vogt to me. He's got that head down style, and again they're going from the front trying to counter attack, and Bettini's gone out the door. It's Valverde who's given it a dig. Oh, this is extraordinary. David Duffield's prediction of Paolo Bettini looks to be a little flawed at the moment. Maybe he's just going to shelter in that group. He's a canny rider. Well, there's a lot of kilometers still to go. It sounds like it's quite near, but with 9.7 kilometers to go. But anything can happen here. They haven't got that much of a gap. They have to work very, very hard to bring it out. And still Jens Vogt dragging them along. Well, it's been an extraordinary split, bit by bit by bit. Everybody's being shelled out the back. There's a No Escatel rider in there. There's Frank Schleck. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 riders making it across to these front four now. Gulping in air is the rider from T-Mobile. That's Sinkovits. Sinkovits, a man who's due for a big win, I would say, wouldn't you, Graham? He's been knocking on the door for quite a while.
Yes, definitely. Also custom Kroons there.
Echeberria is the man from Liberty Seguros. Schleck now going across the gap. Oh, this is really fabulous stuff. Well, I think you've caught sight of somebody I hadn't caught sight of. I was concentrating on the front people. Did you? Is that Basso in there as well?
Yeah, there is number 11.
Well, we did. Some people who've been contributing to the board have been saying that they think Basso is going to do something, and Basso is launching himself off the front with a teammate. That's little Fabian Wegmann, I think, we mentioned earlier, number 36. Well, this is a very, very talented group indeed. Schleck trying to bridge that gap now. He's got Echeberria behind him from Liberty Seguros. Let his hair grow these days, so it's a little bit longer. Who's the rider from Euskaltel in there? Difficult to tell at the moment. We haven't seen him. This is a desperate chase to get on the back of these three leading riders, isn't it?
It is. Basso looks like he was struggling just to stay on the back of that group there. Makes you wonder whether Bettini's whether he's playing a little bit. I think he is struggling actually.
It certainly looked as though he wasn't having a good time before. There's Danilo De Luca on the rear wheel of Bettini. He's trying to use these guys to get up there. At least Bettini's trying, isn't he? He's, all the favourites are trying to drag themselves up to the lead riders. There's Frank Schleck. De Luca is sitting right behind Bettini. I'm not sure if they haven't caught them, have they? I still think they're slightly ahead, those two.
Yeah, I think they are still just in front.
Well, the rider from Euskaltel trying to hang on the back now, having done a big turn, is Samuel Sanchez. So all the people we've mentioned that could do something in this race if they keep the pace going, they're all in there at the moment, and the outside chances as well. We've got Fabian Wegmann there wearing number 36. Samuel Sanchez, the rider who's did so well in the Basque Tour, and Paris-Nice just didn't quite get it together enough to pull off a victory. This is the front now. I think they have been brought in.
Yeah,
Graham,
they have, yes, yeah. This is the leading group.
Valverde for Casa de Pagna. Sanchez is in here. Bettini, David Echeberria, Danilo De Luca has made it to this group. Valverde, as you can see, is just coming back towards the back of the group. Sanchez goes to the front. Sinkovits, Schleck. Oh, this is a good group.
And Sanchez as well.
And they've got a handy little gap over the next 10 riders or so, and they're going to keep the pace very, very high. I would suggest, Graham, that unless somebody makes it across right now, the winner's going to come out of this group.
It looks like it is. It just depends whether they start looking at each other and seeing who's going to make the pace. There's actually, I don't think there's anybody there with two riders from any one team, so that's the thing, whether they start looking at each other.
Echeberria coming now to do the work, and one of the Lampre riders has gone across to the front. There's Ivan Basso, number 11. Well, he's got a rider in the group already. Astuloa, who was in the break earlier, is now is suffered and gone back. He's in the second group. There's Coldo Gil for Sonia Deval. Casa de Pagna riders aren't going to help because they've got Valverde in the group.
Well, the gap's still only 6 seconds between these two groups, so they could still come back. Any hesitation from that leading group and they'll be back.
One team who hadn't got anybody in the leading group is this one, Lampre, trying to make the bridge. I'm not sure who the rider is from Lampre trying to get across, but they need to get in there. 8 seconds now the gap we're hearing on race radio between this group of riders you're seeing here and the lead group with Bettini. Schleck, he's made across the Lampre rider. There's Schleck, and he's made onto the wheel of Schleck. Just ahead is De Luca. Then Samuel Sanchez coming back into line. Echeberria just coming back behind Echeberria now is Valverde. Then Patrick Sinkovits. Then Paolo Bettini on the front. Well, he's got extraordinary powers of recuperation, has Paolo Bettini. And he's a very aggressive little rider, but given the Do you think he might be sandbagging? You still think he might be sandbagging, Graham? Because he's in that lead group still.
It's possible. While he's still there, he's always in with a chance. But I think this climb, if he isn't 100%, I think he's going to struggle to win this one at that climb at the finish.
And we've got just under 6 kilometres to go, 5.9 kilometres. So you're looking at about 1.5, just under 1.5 kilometres for the final climb. This is the run down into the town of Huy. And looks like Bouygues are chasing. Trying to get on the back of this group now. Bertognoli is in there as well. Leonardo Bertognoli, what a great season he's had so far. Really first-class riding. He's won a stage in Tirreno Adriatico. Won the Tour de Haute Var, which is a pretty tough race in its own right. A good all-rounder. They seem to be slowing down at the front. They're letting De Luca do the work. Valverde is in there.
Yeah, that's what I said. They're looking at each other, and that group from behind has just got back on now. So we've got a leading group of about 15 riders, I think, now, maybe more.
Well, that throws cat amongst the pigeons as well, doesn't it? Because if anybody's been hiding in that second group with a little bit of energy reserve, they've got a little bit left to get up that last climb of the day. This is a fascinating finish. There's some really good attacking riders in this group, Graham. What do you reckon?
Very difficult to pick out a winner here, but the person who's been looking very strong to me is Valverde. But you know, I think if it comes together at the bottom of this climb, then I think you're going to be looking at Valverde. But someone like Sanchez, I don't know.
Well, the big favourites of having to do all the work, of course. Valverde and Sinkovic was on the front doing the work. There's Valverde, second in line. He's got a teammate with him now. Was that a CSC rider ahead of him? Let's have a quick look. CSC rider is Basso ahead of him. He has got a teammate in there, though. Basso in this lead group. Well, I wouldn't put it past him to launch an attack either. He'd love to show that he'll be well aware, won't he, of the history. Bjarne Riis is a clever man. He'll be aware of the history that the last two riders to win this race, well, 10 years ago it was Lance Armstrong who went on to win the Tour. And also that in '86, 10 years previous to that, so 20 years ago from now, Laurent Fignon won here, went on to win the Tour. And Basso would like to make it another 10th anniversary win, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I think if you look back, you can see lots of riders who've done well in the Tour have won this race. You can go back to Hino, Merckx, all those sort of people have all done well in this.
It rewards us a good, strong, attacking, climbing riders. Well, Asteleur will be pleased he's got back in this group. There's Fabian Wegman, Schleck, and De Luca, and Bertognoli moving up just about now. Well, I think the riders will be looking to recuperate for this last climb towards the back here. Schleck is in there. Samuel Sanchez is the man who's not moved up at all, sitting right at the back, although he was in the lead group. Sheltering from everybody, recuperating as much as possible. Bertognoli's there as well. There they are. There's Coldogil next to Sanchez. Well, I wonder whether Sanchez can pull off something. Get rid of that bidon. Doesn't need that anymore. Well, away goes the rider from De Wittemon Lotto. That's a concerted attack. Putting a real dig in with 2.5 kilometers to go. He's gone a bit early on this climb. And he's going to get reeled in by the Casa de Pagna rider. Working for Valverde. CSC there working hard. Basso in line. Right at the front doing his turn. And to see the teammate of Valverde just dropping in straight behind him to give him some shelter. Not sure who the De Wittemon Lotto rider is, to be honest. Well, I wonder if it's I don't think it was Mario Arts. He looked a bit big for Mario Arts. It's certainly not Van Summeren. He's much bigger. Look at this.
Interesting bit of road. Through the road works.
How lovely is that? Christophe Brandt it could be. Could well be Christophe Brandt. They're approaching the foot of the Mur de Huy. Just 200 meters or so to go before they get there. Look at the amount of work being done on the front by Ivan Basso, Graham. This is incredible.
Yeah, he's obviously not thinking of winning it himself, but trying to work for one of the other riders in his team.
Schleck is the man he's working for, and the rider from De Wittemon Lotto is Leukemans. Oh, well, amazing. He's a very good rider, is Leukemans. He's launched the attack very early. I think he knows that there are other teams in there working for other men, and they'll all be looking at each other. He's got nobody there, and he's given it everything he can as soon as he can. There's Philippe Gilbert, another of my outside choices, in second place in that group now. He's moving up there. I'm still of a mind to, I know Valverde looks really good, but I'm still of a mind to look at Gilbert and possibly Wegman as an outsider. 1 kilometre to go then, and they're on this very, very steep ascent. It's all started to come together as they looked at each other. But Leukemans has got away. Holdo Gil is going across the gap as fast as he can to try and get away from the main favourites. Two teams with no secondary riders in there. Sonia Deval and De Wittemon Lotto have launched attacks. Still Leukemans out ahead. Holdo Gil, who's launched 2 separate attacks already, testing his legs, has gone on the offensive. Well, I didn't expect this guy to launch an attack so early, Graham.
No, a very strong attack, actually, a surprise, but the hardest part of this climb still to come, and there's Sanchez.
Samuel Sanchez, the man who was lurking on the back dangerously, not doing any work. He's got other Igor Astaloa behind him as well. There's a Milram rider in there who have no idea who that is, because we hadn't even seen him come up. Holdo Gil blown out of the water. Astaloa looking very strong indeed. He's got Sanchez on his wheel. And the rider from Milram going across as well. I wish we could see what number it was. Here comes Igor Astaloa, former world road race champion. Valverde just behind as well, breathing in hard. Kessler in there as well. Sanchez beginning to struggle. Astaloa looking very, very good indeed.
Echevarria attacking as well. Still a long way to go on this steep climb.
Oh, this is fantastic. Everybody's all together with the exception of Astaloa, who's ahead. You can see Sergei Iganov get, look how steep this is. There's Peter Wiening right at the back, really, really struggling. A man who won in the Alsace region, but Astaloa has given it everything. Can he just keep it going for more than a kilometre out of the saddle? Looking back over his shoulder. It's Echevarria who's chasing. He looks to be tiring. He's going to get caught. Echevarria is leading the charge. Valverde looking very, very strong and very dangerous. De Luca. Sanchez is struggling as well. Valverde looks to be the man who's got the legs at the moment. Echevarria looks like he's just keeping Valverde behind. Will he be able to do so?
It really is not really a sprint, is it? It's just a strong man just keeping it going.
Oh, it's just a grind, isn't it? An absolute grind. The CSC rider, I think, is that Carsten Kroon, and there comes Schleck. He's distancing De Luca. Sanchez is putting in a last effort. It's Sanchez and Valverde side by side. I think it's Kroon as well on the front. Valverde's moving to the front. Sanchez is blown. He's not going to take it. Valverde, Graham Jones' choice of victor today. Looking very strong indeed. Going to take the win here in the first of the Ardennes Classics. A super, super time victory for this man, Alejandro Valverde. Well, shows how much I know about outsiders. They're way, way down. The first of the outsiders, Holdo Gil coming in. Sergei Ivanov, then Matthias Kessler. There's Wegman in front of Paolo Bettini. What a finish. That is such a hard slog. The first of the Unibet riders to come over, Garcia Quesada. Well, that was a terrific finish, and right on the money, Graham Jones. We'll have you back again. Do we have to pay you now?
No, Valverde was just looking strong all the time. He was just covering, last 40 kilometres, he was always in the first 5 or 6 riders, covering all the moves, and perfect finish for him. We know he can sprint even on the flat, and also we've seen him win stages in the mountains in the Tour de France, so he was obviously going to be one to beat.
Well, Samuel Sanchez trying again. He shows what his good form he's got, but Valverde showing his hand early again as a potential winner all year round. Saw Didier Roux come over the line as well, the grand old man of French racing. Well, he and Laurent Brochard both riding for Bouygues Telecom. Fairly well up there. Leukemans, I think that is, coming over now. What a a brave attempt at an early attack at just over 2.5 kilometres. That's an awful long way to go out if you're not super strong, isn't it?
It just shows you how hard the climb is, though, because look how much time he lost in that short time. With a kilometre to go, he was in front.
Extraordinary, isn't it? Fourth, Frank Schleck. Fifth, Patrick Sinkiewicz. Well, Schleck fails to do the double, but a top 5 place for the CSC man. Sinkiewicz coming in 5th. Here we are then. Valverde, Sanchez, Carsten Kroon it was. Schleck in 4th, Sinkiewicz in 5th, De Luca, Echeverria, Koldo, Gil, Sarra, Iganov, and Matthias Kessler. That is a class field. A great win for Alejandro Valverde from Samuel Sanchez. The Spaniards taking the first 2 steps to the podium from Carsten Kroon, the Dutchman, riding for a Danish team, CSC, in 3rd. Well, Valverde said he was targeting these Ardennes Classic, looking super strong, never really blowing at all. I thought perhaps he was suffering a little bit when the initial attacks were launched, including the one by well, Frank Schleck and et al. He hung on to the back. Igor Astalor was one of the guys who launched an early attack about 10k out, and I thought he was suffering a little bit then, but obviously managed to get back on. He paced Bettini back on, though, didn't he?
He did, yeah. But just looking at that finish, I think Valverde just waited till the last possible minute. You can see there, as soon as the others started, that was it. Anyway, he opened the gap straight away. It's such a tough climb, this. It's so easy to go too early. And I think Astalor paid for his attack. I mean, his attack, he was really riding stronger, but I think he just probably could have finished a lot higher, maybe even challenged for the win if it had left it a little bit. Well, obviously had nobody else around him. Maybe he wasn't feeling super strong, but well, maybe he was feeling super strong. He went very early, right at the bottom of the climb, and Astalor for a while, holding off absolutely everybody. Is there a point when you're behind a rider like Astalor and they're riding that strongly with a kilometre to go, you think, well, do you panic if you're chasing? Well, someone like Valverde wouldn't have panicked. He would have waited and he'd have assessed the situation. If he thought nobody else was going to take up the chase, which somebody did, he would have probably made the effort himself. I think he always had himself covered there. I think he knew he was going to win that, or he was going to take some beating.
Well, he opened up the gap very, very quickly. Alejandro Valverde, the Spaniard riding for Casa de Paña, takes victory today in Flèche Wallonne, this 70th year of the race. And a great race we've had indeed. It all blew apart within the last 25 kilometres, and group after group splitting and resplitting, coming back together. Real flowing entity, this peloton today, as we said earlier. But Valverde just timing it perfectly, setting himself up for the rest of the year. Well, join us in the weekend, Sean and I, for Liège-Bastogne-Liège. From me, David Harmon, from Graham Jones, goodbye.